Pretty, isn't it? Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
After my Dead Hard video, I received one piece of feedback over any other. Please make a video discussing the issues with NOED. So, here we go. Hello friends, I'm Das Food, and today we'll be taking a look at Hex, No One Escapes Death, and covering why I think the perk is ultimately bad for the health of Dead by Daylight. Before going further, we need to define our terms so that nobody is left in the dark as to what we're talking about. Hex, No One Escapes Death, or as it is more commonly known, NOED, is one of Dead by Daylight's killer perks, meaning only players using the killer role can use it. NOED is a Hex perk, which means that one of 5 totems on the map will light up with a small fire, indicating the presence of a Hex. Hexes are often far stronger than other perks, but come at the cost of being able to be irreparably destroyed by survivors, with the lone exception of Hex Pentimento. Unlike most other Hex perks, however, NOED does not begin each trial with the possibility of being cleansed. You see, most Hex perks enter the trial able to be destroyed whether they're active or not. It doesn't matter whether you have stacks for Huntress Lullaby or Devour Hope or anything like that, as the game will automatically assign them to a totem and allow for their immediate destruction. Where NOED is different from its counterparts, therefore, is that the Hex is not assigned to a totem until the 5th and final generator has been completed. Again, Pentimento changes things, it also is unique in this regard. When this happens, the killer gains a movement speed buff of 4%, and all survivors are afflicted with the exposed status effect. In simple terms, being exposed means that a survivor will enter the dying state after one hit, regardless of if they're injured or not. Both the speed buff and the exposed status effect will remain in play until the Hex totem is destroyed. So, with definitions out of the way, why do I dislike NOED? Above all else, it's an issue of fairness. To die to NOED is one of the more frustrating things that can happen in Dead by Daylight. Making matters worse is that, in my completely anecdotal evidence, worse killers tend to use the perk more than skilled killers, and I'm not saying that trappers and Freddies are more inherently likely to use the perk. I'm saying that players behind the killers determine if NOED will be used more often than not. The less skillful a player is, the more likely they are to rely on NOED. It actually doesn't have much to do with the tier of the killer. And why wouldn't they? Given its function, NOED is all but designed to reward bad play. While it's true that a player can be playing at least generally well and still trigger NOED, it's untrue that a player could be playing poorly and not trigger NOED. Unless all the totems have been cleansed, but more on that in a bit. NOED is, for all intents and purposes, the crutchiest crutch perk in the game. Now, that's somewhat understandable given that survivors have a whole plethora of crutch perks at their disposal, but that doesn't make NOED fair. The answer to grossly overpowered survivor perks is not grossly overpowered killer perks. That's just not how balance works, generally. And make no mistake, NOED is grossly overpowered. Players generally tend to hate add-ons like Eerie Head Hatchets or Pinky Finger Bottles, but NOED allows killers to harness the power of those add-ons without utilizing the would-be requisite skill. You don't have to land a hatchet hit, a bottle toss, or do anything remotely skillful. You only have to land a basic attack. And with the 4% boost to movement speed, that's way easier to do than it may seem. And let's talk about that speed boost for a minute. While it is undoubtedly a secondary bonus when compared to the exposed status effect, a 4% boost to speed is not negligible. 21 of the game's 27 killers move at 115% movement speed, as opposed to the 100% speed of survivors, meaning a buff of only 4% enables them to walk nearly 20% faster than survivors. Looping can already be difficult enough, but when Bubba or Pyramid Head starts to move even faster, the situation is likely to get dire rather quickly, especially, again, with the exposed status effect in play. And that's not to mention how helpful the speed boost can be for sub-115 killers too. Running NOED can help dreadfully slow killers such as Huntress or Deathslinger become even deadlier. On niche builds such as Scratch Mirror Myers, NOED is almost a necessity these days. In short, the speed boost is rather strong. Even so, nobody logical is angry with NOED because of the speed boost. For all the power contained within an extra 4% movement speed, that aspect of the perk is nothing compared to the other half of the equation. A case can be made that NOED on certain killers is not that much of a problem. Low tier killers such as Clown, Trapper, and Nightmare are able to use NOED without becoming too oppressive. Sure, they get much stronger when NOED activates, but I'm not concerned with killers who go from D tier to A tier. No, I'm far more concerned with already great killers who are then given this tremendous power boost. And let me be clear, no nurse needs NOED, no spirit needs NOED, no blight needs NOED. And if you're playing one of those killers and you feel like you do need NOED, I hate to be too blunt, but that's a skill issue. The 3 killers I just listed are more than capable of dismantling even good survivor teams and should never require NOED to win. While I get that Nurse and Blight have massive learning curves, using NOED only gives you cheap wins instead of usable losses. NOED may well be balanced on some killers, but on some, most especially the always problematic Nurse, it's anything but. But food, I hear you say. You can avoid NOED, just do bones. And you're right, NOED can absolutely be circumvented. By simply cleansing all 5 totems, survivors guarantee with 100% accuracy that NOED will not activate for any reason. What's more, it's a really good feeling when you cleanse all bones and see in the in-game chat that the killer had NOED and wasn't able to use it. That's a good feeling, that's an exciting moment in DBD. And, just for the sake of fairness, let's clarify that finding bones is not a Herculean, impossible task. Perks such as Detective's Hunch and Counterforce make finding totems a breeze, as do some maps. Maps is in the ones that survivors can bring in, by the way. I'm only now realizing as I look at the script that it sounds like I'm saying some maps make it easier to find totems, which I suppose that's true, but I meant the maps you carry and they actually show you exactly where totems are. All of that to say, if survivors want to find all 5 totems, doing so is hypothetically easy. Even so, cleansing all totems is far easier in a vacuum than it is in actuality. In actuality, you're going to be chased, hooked, and hopefully forced to rescue teammates throughout the match. And sometimes that final totem is just not feasible to grab. Sometimes you've cleansed 3 to 4 totems, but your solo queue teammates weren't as proactive, so NOED still activates anyway, and you die rather unnecessarily. Sometimes you look for totems, but you're on RPD or Larry's, maps where totems allegedly exist, but nobody's been able to confirm. Sometimes cleansing all 5 totems simply isn't within your power as a survivor. One quick aside, none of this applies to you, 4-man Swifts. If you have an entire team and you guys are all on comms, you've had every chance to cleanse all totems and you deserve NOED if you don't prevent it. You have none of my sympathy and I hope the clown sucks your fingers extra hard. For everyone else though, yeah, NOED sucks. It's a perk that punishes you for completing the objective and can only be countered through the use of niche perks or luck. And let's be clear, using Counterforce to avoid NOED isn't the same as using Lightborn because you fear flashlights or some other trivial quality of life benefit. Lightborn is a fairly weak perk, used only when killers don't feel like checking their surroundings before picking up every down survivor. And flashlights are small parts of the game that only sometimes impact the flow of a particular match. Oh, and if you're one of the goofballs who thinks that Lightborn is in any way OP, touch it. Go on. Go on, yeah, we'll wait. Don't worry, just touch it. NOED doesn't compare to Lightborn, because the exposed status effect doesn't compare to flashlights. One is game-changing and oppressive. The other is, more often than not, a meme. In fact, nothing in Dead by Daylight quite compares to NOED. Sure, there are other unfair perks that more often than not punish good play, like Dead Hard or the still stupid Decisive Strike. But nothing on either side is quite as needlessly strong as NOED. And the sad part is, it doesn't have to be like this. With only small tweaks, NOED could become much more tolerable. Some have suggested time limits for NOED, which would essentially make it a late game Haunted Grounds. Of course, this isn't a perfect analogy, as Haunted Grounds can still be completely avoided, while NOED would, in this case, essentially not be avoidable. Still, giving NOED the lifespan of a minute or so would definitely make the perk more palatable. My idea for reworking NOED can be found within the name of the perk itself, to some extent. No One Escapes Death as a title denotes the concept of a chase, one that needs escaping. As such, I would like to see NOED function along the thought of, okay, how do we make chases more exciting. So I would want it to function as follows. When the exit gates are powered, NOED activates and hexes a random totem. While this totem remains standing, killer movement speed is increased by 10%. In this version of NOED, there is no exposed status effect. Rather, we invest all of the perk's value into the more fun aspect of the perk, the speed boost. By buffing a killer's speed even further, NOED not only becomes less frustrating to play against, but also allows for fun synergy with perks such as Fire Up, Bamboozle, Play with Your Food, Brutal Strength, Save the Best for Last, and more. This way, killers are given a noticeable and meaningful buff without survivors having to deal with BS infuriating insta-downs. I know some survivors would still complain about this version of the perk, but let's be honest. If behavior tried to balance their perks so that survivors wouldn't complain, they'd be better off just deleting the game. It's not going to happen. Some players simply can never be satisfied, but I think most of us would see the fun in a teabagging Ghostface moving at 125% movement speed, at least until the totem's destroyed. But that's my case against NOED and my potential rework. What do you guys think? Do you have a problem with NOED, or do I just need to touch bones? If we were to analyze another problematic perk, which one would you like to see covered? As always, if you enjoyed this video or found it informative, please make sure to hit the like button, as it does help me out a tremendous amount. And if you're into goofy fun, head on over to Twitch and drop me a follow. I stream 3 days a week, and sometimes even more than that. But all of that aside, until next time, I've been Dustfood. Bye, friends.